Play a great team like Ohio State, you can't not be clicking on all cylinders. And they were clicking on all cylinders. We didn't really have the ability to stop them and didn't have the ability to get something going for us on offense.
Strap in. The Rip City Drive with Chad Dewing starts now.
All right, Happy New Year, my friends. What's going on? Chad Dewing, Rip City Drive. Hope you enjoyed your holiday week and your New Year's Eve. I was down at Spirit Mountain Casino for Spirit Mountain and the Chocolate Factory. I got to live out one of my dreams, which was to have a photograph taken with Oompa Loompas. So I did that. It was a great setup, a great scene. And then on New Year's Day, yesterday morning, I did a pregame show leading into the Rose Bowl from Spirit Mountain Casino. And what a day of college football it was. Here's what's going on with the show today. The Trailblazers are in action tonight. They kick off a 5-game road trip in Los Angeles against the Lakers. That game will tip off at 7:30. Chris Burkhardt will have game day starting at 5:30. So you've got the Rip City Drive for the next 2.5 hours. Brenden Slaughter is here. The game will tip off at 7:30, and we'll have it for you live on your home of the Blazers, 620 Rip City Radio, presented by Coors Light. Sean Hyken, our Trailblazer insider from the Rose Garden Report, will join us coming up at 3:20. And then Chris Burkhardt, Duck grad and proud Duck fan, will join us at 4:20 to focus in on the Rose Bowl and what we saw take place yesterday. So if you want to jump on board, if you want to react to the Rose Bowl, 503-248-0620 is your telephone number. 503-248-0620 is your telephone number. Right now, the Sugar Bowl, which was rescheduled after that freaky, scary terrorist attack down in New Orleans, it kicked off at 1 o'clock today, Notre Dame at Georgia. Right now, Notre Dame, they scored 10 points in 11 seconds right before halftime, and they lead the Bulldogs by a score of 13-3. So I'll keep you up to date on that game and what's going on in that game as it continues on if you're out there driving around. And by the way, not a good way to kick off 2025 when you wake up and you look outside and you're like, really? This is the best that the Northwest has to offer. 42 degrees and absolutely just pouring down rain. The drive in today sucked. The only good part about it is that most people are still not working, so there wasn't a lot of traffic, but just a horrendous day outside. You can't golf in this weather. You don't want to go outside in this weather. Heck, I didn't want to crawl out from under the covers. It's like the ultimate brutal Northwest afternoon.
I can't blame you, Chad. It's pretty easy to say Mother Nature is PO'd today, for sure. It was puddles of water coming in today.
Horrendous. Absolutely horrendous. So if you want to jump on board, 503-248-0620. But I want to focus in on the Peach Bowl, and then I'll get into the Peach Bowl a little more in depth coming up at 5 o'clock. But as you know, I have adopted the Sun Devils as my college football team, and this has been the making of 24 years. I started going down to games back in 2000. I was introduced to the idea of a weekend getaway, sports weekend getaway by my buddy Steve, my best friend. And so we started going down to Tempe to check out NFL and college football games. Tempe is a great place. Great weather, great setup, great layout. The stadium is awesome. The restaurants are great. Mill Avenue is phenomenal. The Valley's got everything you want. It's a major sports town. They've got it all. NFL, Major League Baseball, hockey, college football, NBA, everything you could want. Baseball. I love it down there. It's my favorite place to go. So I started going, and then over the years, we started going to more and more games. I saw the Sun Devils play live 4 times this year. I saw them play live a couple of times last year. I've been down as many as 6 times to see them play. And so I've just kind of gravitated towards the program. Initially, it was mostly because I loved the setup and the city and the layout and the weather. But when they got Kenny Dillingham as head coach, I really became captivated by Kenny Dillingham and his energy. I knew about the work he did at Oregon under Dan Lanning and really turning around Bo Nix after his stint at Auburn. But I was fascinated by the work and the energy of Kenny Dillingham. Well, a couple of years ago, he had a chance to go back to his alma mater in ASU and take over as head coach. He grew up in the Valley. He went to high school in Scottsdale. He and his family grew up as Sun Devil fans. They won tailgating awards. Like, he was your quintessential Sun Devil honk. He loved the Sun Devils. And he met his wife there at ASU where he went to college. So for him, unlike a lot of coaches, Arizona State was not a stepping stone. It wasn't a step, a job where he's looking to, work a couple of years and then move on to the bigger and better job. That was his dream job. And there's a difference when you have someone that's got that level of commitment and he understands the area. And at his introductory press conference, he talked about activating the Valley. And so he's done a great job. Love Kenny Dillingham. And he did a great job in the portal. But the biggest thing he did when he took over was identify a talent that was severely under-recruited coming out of high school in the Northern California area in Camp Scattaboo. He got 2 offers as a high schooler, Holy Cross and Sacramento State. That's it. Now, how in the world does a guy like Cam Scattaboo go unnoticed? And I heard someone talking about this, and I think there's some validity to it. These players that were in high school and coming into college during the COVID period, during the pandemic, there were a lot of restrictions on recruiting, and there were less people traveling around. And I think as a result, you had less scouts on hand. There were players who went a little more unnoticed, and that's how a guy like Cam Scattaboo can slip through the cracks. Because once he went to Arizona State, he's what we saw yesterday in the Peach Bowl, he's been doing for 2 years. And starting last year, I saw him play twice, in a loss to Oklahoma State and in a blowout loss to Arizona. But the stuff we saw from Scattaboo in the Peach Bowl yesterday and all throughout this year when the Sun Devils were good, he was doing the same exact things and showcasing his versatility last year. But no one cared because Arizona State wasn't a factor. They weren't relevant, and they haven't been relevant, for a long time. And so I would talk Cam Scattaboo and encourage people to watch him and check him out. And this year, an even better year for Scattaboo, and I continue to talk about him because I'm fascinated by him. And no one cared. And I understand that because we pay attention to the stories that matter. But Arizona State, as they continued to collect wins as the season went along, they started to get more attention, and people started to take notice of Scattaboo. And he ended up being, I think, 5th in the Heisman balloting, which is terrific. Now, I would have voted him number 1. He had over 2,000 yards from scrimmage, set the Arizona State rushing record, 19 touchdowns. I mean, he's just an animal. But he finally got to showcase it yesterday in a wild, wild football game. So Texas scored a touchdown early in that fourth quarter, and that's where things got crazy. The game got drunk. I mean, really drunk. And we saw things that we had never seen before. And this is where Scattaboo started to take over. So think about this. 16-point deficit. It's 4th down. You have to convert or you're done, and this is what Scattaboo pulled out.
4th down and 2. Trailing by 2 possessions. Scattaboo's going to try to throw it downfield, and it is caught. And into the end zone goes Malik McClain. Cam Scattaboo.
All right, here we are about midway through the 4th. They get the touchdown pass from Scattaboo, which was terrific, and they get the 2-point conversion. 24-16, Texas ball, and Arizona State needs to get the ball back. Well, they got their opportunity.
Ewers to pass. Downfield wants every bit of it, and it's intercepted. It is intercepted by Robinson.
So they get the interception, plenty of time on the clock, and in that quick change of possession, they went for the big-time play. This time, Sam Levitt finding Scattaboo working one-on-one down the sideline.
Levitt going to launch it downfield. Looking for Scattaboo, and he gets him. Flag is down. Stiff arm. Helmet off. And multiple flags down.
They would go on to get the touchdown and get the 2-point conversion after a holding penalty on Texas, and they tie it up at 24. Texas, with plenty of time on the clock, would go down, and with about a minute and a half on the clock, it was 4th down, and they decided to go for the field goal. From, a little less than 50 yards, 40-something odd yards. Take a listen.
From 48 yards, and it is staying to the right. And we are staying tied up.
That was amazing. So Arizona State has the ball, and they have over a minute on the clock, and they've got some time to work with to get in field goal range. Facing a 3rd down and long, Sam Levitt completed the pass to Melquan Stovall, 5 yards short of the sticks. But on replay, you could clearly see that there was targeting. Stovall got blasted helmet to helmet and was on his back on the ground for quite some time. Well, the official came out and announced that they were going to review the play for possible targeting, and I thought that's a no-brainer. They'll get a 15-yard penalty. They'll be in plus territory and have a chance to set up for the field goal. And they came back and said there was no targeting after review. all I can say is that Arizona State got screwed in that moment. And the officials really, I think, did a favor to one of the bigger brands from the bigger conference in the SEC in Texas. They didn't do it, and that's the perception. That's what we all believe. Because I think if it was Arizona State and the role was reversed, they throw the flag on Arizona State. A total BS. Well, Texas, after that, is able to get down in field goal position again, this time from like 38 yards. And this is what I call poetic justice.
38-yard attempt to make it to the national semifinals and to cap a classic. Does he have it? Right, denies him. Sparky's got life.
What I love about that, Steve Sarkisian went out to give a little pep talk to his kicker right before he kicked it because he had just missed the one a few minutes prior. I knew as soon as the coach talked to him that he was done, and he hooked it left, and it doinked off the upright. And quite frankly, Texas deserved that because the officials decided to punk Arizona State on the targeting call. So they go to overtime, and Arizona State, on a great scramble run by Levitt, gets in position inside the 5, and they score the touchdown, get the extra point. They're up by 7. And the Arizona State defense, which played terrific throughout the course of the game, put Texas in a 4th and 13. And all I'm thinking is you're one play away. One play away. Make a play. That's all you have to do is make a play. And they couldn't do it. They couldn't do it. They couldn't make the play. And I was like, are you kidding me?
Texas must convert 4th and 13.
It's a blitz look here. Quinn Ewers trying to audible.
To stay alive. Can they hook 'em? Touchdown, Matthew Golden. Texas must convert.
There you go. They got the touchdown. Touchdown, Texas. They tie the game on 4th and 13. I wanted Arizona State to blitz. I thought that was the right play. You force Ewers to get the ball out of his hands quicker than what he wants. Incomplete, game over. But a great blitz pickup by Texas. They get the touchdown over the top, and they force a second overtime. And Texas scored on their first play. They get the 2-point conversion, and Arizona State has to score and get the 2-point conversion to force a third overtime.
3rd and 8. Levitt. That ball's intercepted. It is intercepted. Makuba seals it. Hook 'em horns. They're headed home to Texas to play in the Cotton Bowl. Texas advances. Makuba seals it.
All right, so there you go. Texas gets the win 39-31 in overtime. I did want you to hear this, the touchdown pass from Scadaboo. He was on Dan Patrick today, and he was asked about the play. What's the play called in the huddle on 4th down where Scadaboo found Malik McClain for the touchdown?
Oh, Philly special.
Oh.
So it was actually supposed to be a throwback to the quarterback. And I checked my receiver to a fade ball, and I seen him went inside, so I know how to put it.
Wait a minute. That's kind of big time stuff here. Like
yeah. So Sam told me the drive before, somebody rolled up my ankle. I can't really run. So you're gonna have to make something happen. And I was like, all right, well, let's go. And then the Philly special was called, and I looked at my receiver, and it was 1-on-1 out there. When I knew as soon as I caught the ball from the toss that safety was going to come flying down because he was flying down all game. And as soon as I seen that guy 1-on-1, I knew we had the better athlete in that receiver. He hasn't played all season, but I knew what he was about. And as soon as I seen him went inside, I knew I had to put it inside of him. It was a little underthrown, but I guess I put it in a spot where only he could get it. So
yeah, it was pretty awesome. Great season for Arizona State. Cam Scadaboo in the game, one of the all-timers. 1-for-1 passing, 42 yards and a touchdown, 30 carries, 143 yards and 2 touchdowns, and 8 receptions for 99 yards. I wonder how many people would have voted Cam Scadaboo the Heisman Trophy winner after seeing that game, if they voted at a different time. He's just a great player. He's the quintessential football player. He's super tough. He was vomiting on the sideline. He was in and out and in and out. I mean, he was great. He's awesome. But that's him. He's tough. I'm just telling you that whatever NFL team decides to draft him, they're going to wind up with just a big-time football player. He would be dynamite in special teams. You could use him in the backfield on third down because he knows how to catch the football. He's great in short yardage. He runs really hard, and he's all about ball. And I love players like that. So I had a lot of fun watching the game. I wish it would have gone a little bit different in terms of the outcome. I hate Texas, too. I grew up in Oklahoma. Screw Texas, man. Screw Texas. I can tell you one thing. Texas is not winning a national championship with Quinn Ewers at quarterback. And Ewers has got another year of eligibility. My guess is after this year, they'll move on to Manning. They'll go to Arch Manning. And then Ewers will probably get massive NIL dollars to play somewhere else for another year. You know, Ewers has got a chance to be a pro, but he probably needs a little bit more seasoning. But they're going to have a hard time winning a national title against Ohio State or whoever they have to face with Quinn Ewers at quarterback because he's just not dynamic enough. You know, he's been good for Texas, but to win a national championship, you got to be really dynamic at that position. As for Sam Leavitt, he'll be going back to Arizona State next year. He's one of those guys that's got Heisman-type potential. Keep an eye on him. You saw it yesterday with the feet. Good at moving. He can scramble, accurate with the football, and he's still young and learning, so he's only going to continue to get better. But this is what I love about this new, format with the college football playoff. And I know people were complaining about the seeding and the this and that. That stuff will work itself out. Clearly, Oregon should not have been playing Ohio State in their first game. We know that. But the format's not going to stay this way forever. They had to make concessions to get a 12-team playoff done before 2026, and part of that was automatic buys for the conference winners. And as a result, because of the format of the playoff, you have teams playing certain teams that they shouldn't be playing based on how they did during the regular season. But what it did provide us was a regular season of games that mattered from week one all the way up until the very end. And it also gave an opportunity to see teams like Arizona State get on this stage and prove that they absolutely belong. They absolutely belong. Just because you don't know much about them doesn't mean they can't go out there and perform. And Arizona State, I mean, what's amazing to me, they held Texas to 53 yards rushing. They got off to a slow start. Here's where these games matter. It usually comes down to like 4 or 5 big plays that determine the outcome. For Arizona State, they missed a field goal early. They had issues in the red zone. Texas had a good goal line stand. And their inability to capitalize on those red zone opportunities early, along with the missed field goal, it cost them. It cost them. You have to capitalize in those spots if you hope to advance in the playoffs, especially against teams with the better talent. But I thought Arizona State represented well. Sam Leavitt's going to be a star, and Cam Scatterbo now will move on to the NFL, where I just hope the Broncos draft him. Some smart coach out there is going to notice Scatterbo. He'll be drafted somewhere probably around the 5th round, and no one will talk about it, and then he's going to show up and just be a ball player. Some guys are just football guys. Scatterbo would be one of those dudes. All right, we'll keep things rolling here on the Rip City Drive. Happy New Year, my friends. When we come back, we'll focus in on the Trailblazers, who kick off a 5-game road trip tonight in L.A. against the Lakers. Sean Hyken, our Trailblazer insider from the Rose Garden Report, will stop by. Chris Burkhart will join me for 4:20 and 4:40, so we'll have about 30 minutes to talk with Burkhart as we really zero in on the Rose Bowl, where the Ducks took the loss. So he'll join me at 4:20. I appreciate your time. Telephone number 503-248-0620. You got the Rip City Drive. but they'll end up in a position to where they're going to be able to utilize him. And he'll be a special player. And we've seen guys like Bill Belichick and others utilize players like that, which I think is great. But I thought ASU represented the conference well. They showed that they belong there and they can compete. And what we've seen in the portal so far and in recruiting is that the success of Arizona State is paying dividends. So Kenny Dillingham's in a great Rip City position Drive, to and joining us right continue now is our success. Trailblazer insider I from watched the Rose Boise Garden game Report. It's Sean Hike. on And Sean, New Happy Year's New Year. And I thought the
You
Broncos,
too, man. How are you?
I'm
played
very well, and I I'm thought looking Penn State, forward to a lot of different could've things, played man. better. I thought they NFL allowed playoffs, Boise which to will hang kick off around. here in about a But week and I a was half. impressed with the I enjoyed Broncos. They made the a couple college of football mistakes, playoff a couple games of errors. yesterday. I'm checking out the Sugar Bowl right now. I thought the Arizona State-Texas game was one for the ages, man. That was fun to sit back and watch, especially Cam Scatterbo going crazy.
Yeah, I didn't enjoy the Rose Bowl so much, but yeah.
I wasn't going to bring it up. I'm sorry, man. I did not, you know how it is with sports, and you and I cover games. Like
Yeah.
there are certain times where I anticipate or I have a feel for how things are going to go. I figured that the Ohio State-Oregon game would come down to like a one-possession game. So the way it played out was quite stunning to me. Did that surprise you?
Yeah, I mean, I thought it would be kind of more like the last time they played too. Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was expecting. So, anyways, we'll move along. No need to rehash that game from yesterday for the Duck fans out there. But, the Trailblazers coming off a decent home stretch, and now they kick off a 5-game road trip, which will start in L.A. tonight against the Lakers. What are some of the things you're looking for on this road trip from the Trailblazers, which I think is going to be a very difficult trip for them based on the teams they play?
Yeah, you look at this road trip. I mean, they're in LA tonight to face the Lakers. Now, the Lakers are likely not going to have Anthony Davis tonight. List him as doubtful with an ankle injury, so he might not go tonight. And he destroyed the Blazers in the last game. So,
that could be good news.
I guess so. So we'll see about that one. And then this is a weird travel thing that they have for a few of these long road trips. But with this one, they go from LA today to Milwaukee on Saturday. So they're not even like staying, and then they stay in the Midwest for a little bit. They're in Detroit after that. But yeah, I mean, Milwaukee, obviously, they've kind of come on their rough start of the season. Dame and Giannis have been looking a lot. I mean, they missed the two of them have kind of missed games at different points, but the Bucks are looking better, I think, than they were at the start of the season. So that's going to be a difficult one. Detroit's been surprisingly competitive this year. They've already matched their win total. I don't think they're like a playoff team necessarily in the East, but they've already matched their win total from last season with 14 wins. So, so it's not gonna be like a cakewalk road trip by any means. And honestly, the Blazers shouldn't think of anybody as a cakewalk. But you look at how well Scoot Henderson played in 2 out of those 3 games at home this past week. You'd like to see him continue that a little bit. And Jeremy Grant is once again out tonight with that facial injury, and so I imagine that Toumani Camara and Denny Avdia are both going to be in the starting lineup again. So that's something that you want to see kind of develop that because that might look similar to that after the deadline. So, there's things to keep an eye on.
I know fans get frustrated with the losses and how the losing seasons are piling up. I know they're frustrated with Coach Billups, but don't you think the reason for optimism in this season would be the development and what we've seen from some of the young players with Denny Avdia, obviously the limited time that we've seen from Klingon, he's been very productive. Toumani Camara, who's been one of the best Blazers on the season, and even the last few games where Scoot Henderson has shown an uptick in his play. I would think that, at least for me, that's what I want to see, and so that gives me a little bit of hope moving forward. How do you see that?
Well, Shaden's the other one who's had a pretty good last couple of weeks. So
my bad for not mentioning him.
I mean, Scoot's been a little bit up and down, but the other 4 of those, absolutely.
Yeah, there's no question about it. I want to go back to the game against Philly for just a moment. It wasn't a game where I was frustrated with the Blazers' effort. I thought they were engaged. I just thought Philadelphia did a great job of, playing physical basketball. They played at their tempo, and once it became half court, we saw Philly's half court defense and the Blazers' inability to execute. And then they were able to force Portland into numerous turnovers, a season high in points off turnovers and turnovers for the Trailblazers. So I just thought Philly's game plan and the way they were able to play at their tempo is what the big difference was for me in that game. But it wasn't like an effort thing or where I questioned the Blazers' energy or focus level. I just thought Philadelphia got them into their style of game, and Portland kind of wilted under that pressure in the half court.
Yeah, I didn't think this was in the same category as like the Memphis game or the Utah game, but it turns out Joel Embiid is pretty good. People kind of forgot that here in Portland because he hadn't played here in like 6 years until then because he'd always kind of been out with injuries. But yeah, I mean, I mean, and the Sixers are a team, I was just talking about the Bucks earlier, a team that kind of got off to a rough start and has started to turn their season around. The Sixers are another team in that category where it looked, early on in the season, it looked like they were just completely, they had the biggest off-season signing of the summer with Paul George and, with him and Embiid and Max. And then Jared McCain was looking like the rookie of the year. And then Jared McCain gets hurt. He's probably going to be out for the rest of the season. And then everybody else has kind of been in and out. But they've started to put some things together over the last couple of weeks, too. Philly has.
We're talking with Sean Highkin, our Trailblazer insider here from the Rose Garden Report. You've got a great piece up, and it is titled 5 Questions for the Trailblazers in 2025. So I want to ask you about a couple of these questions. Number one, Sean, what is the market for the Blazers veterans at the deadline or even a little bit farther out this summer?
Yeah, that's going to be an interesting thing to see develop because, it's no secret there's a handful of guys on the team, Jeremy Grant, DeAndre Ayton, Anthony Simons, Matisse Thybulle, chief among them, that are going to be, involved in trade talks between now and the deadline. And then if any of those guys aren't moved at the deadline, then certainly that would be something I would think would be revisited in the offseason. But the league as a whole is kind of in this weird state right now where teams are still figuring out what they can and can't do with these second apron rules. It just makes these kind of transactions, especially with big salaries, harder. So it's just going to be interesting to see kind of where the guys that the Blazers have available to trade come down as far as what teams are willing to give up and whether that's something the Blazers decide is worth doing. It's a whole lot up in the air, really across the whole league, but especially here.
All right, the next question, Sean, and Blazer fans who are frustrated with Billups, I think everyone would agree that this is going to be his last season here in Portland. So my question would be this, between Cronin and his right-hand man, Mike Schmitz, what type of coach do you think they're looking for after the Billups tenure is over?
I don't know. That's why I put it as one of the questions. I don't know what they would do there. There's a lot of different ways they could look. They're going to go with a guy. A lot of people online have been talking about Mike Brown since he just got fired by Sacramento the other day. They're going to go with somebody like that who, has NBA head coaching experience and has had success at a few different places. They're going to try to make a, Jordy Fernandez type of hire in Brooklyn where it's like a young up-and-coming assistant. There's a lot of different ways you can go there as far as, what type of coach you look for. And obviously they'll cross that bridge when they come to it. But this is going to be kind of defining decision for this front office. And, because, Joe Cronin didn't, Joe loves Chauncey. They have a great personal relationship, but Neil Olshey hired Chauncey. Joe didn't. And this would be his chance to, make his own hire. So whatever way they go, it's a decision that they're going to be under a lot of pressure to get right when the time comes. So I'm going to be very curious which way they go there.
How quickly are hires like this normally made? So, the season will end in mid-April, and then they'll part ways with Billups. When would you expect them to hire their next coach? Is that something that would happen right away, like in sometime in April or May, or would they wait until after the draft? How soon would they make that decision?
I would think that they would want to have somebody in place by the draft. I don't know if they necessarily will or would by like the draft lottery or the combine in Chicago. There were a few coaching hires this past cycle, Brooklyn moved pretty quickly with Jordy Fernandez, and so did Charlotte with Charles Lee. But a lot of it is, let's say you want to talk to an assistant on a team that is still in the playoffs, and you have to request permission to interview, and sometimes you want to wait until that coached team is already out of the playoffs, so then there's not really any conflict or distractions. I know when the Blazers hired Chauncey Billups 4 years ago, they couldn't make it official until the Clippers were eliminated in the playoffs, or they could, but they, out of respect because they knew that he was still focused on, the playoffs, they didn't until then. But then, you remember, this is a long time ago now. It's, 13 years ago. But when the Blazers hired Terry Stotts, they didn't make that hire until August. So could be a while, but I would think at that, once it gets to the point where they are looking for a new coach, I would think they would like to have somebody placed by the draft.
All right, Sean, one other question from your piece that you put out. If the lottery doesn't go as planned and the Blazers don't get kind of that alpha, that big-time player that they're desperately seeking, then what would the plan be after that? Would they continue some form of a rebuild? How would they look to retool the roster after that? What is your take on that situation if they don't land one of the big-time dudes who's going to be in the draft this year?
Right, that's kind of something I've been wondering for a while too. If they don't get, obviously the plan, the dream scenario for everybody would be get Cooper Flag, and then you can start pushing this thing forward quickly. Let's say they don't get Cooper Flag. Like, are they gonna just run this, roll this back and say, yeah, we're gonna be bad for another year, but we need another high draft pick. We're gonna go for AJ DeBanza, the kid that just committed to BYU. Like, is that going to be the plan now? And then it's going to be another year of, this, which I don't think anybody really wants that. And I don't know if, some of the people in charge can really afford to have that happen again. Like, it gets tough to do this multiple years in a row. I mean, obviously right now, the situation is what it is with this draft class being what it is and the team's, roster and talent base being what it is. But, it'll be real interesting if things don't go their way in the lottery.
All right. Is there any movement that you've heard of in regards to the potential sale of the franchise?
No, nothing.
And how much freedom, if they don't land the guy that they hope to get, or that we all hope that they were able to land in the lottery, I guess what I'm wondering with Joe Cronin, how much freedom does he have from management to be able to continue to operate before they crank up the pressure to find more wins?
Probably not unlimited pressure. I don't know about like a timeline of, he has X number of years until, he has to get this thing back to the playoffs by X years or else. Like, I don't know of a hard timeline on that, but I don't think there's really much of an appetite to just keep losing forever. And even though they've only been actually rebuilding for 2 years, this is going to be 4 years in a row that the season ends with them trying to lose games and, hope not playing guys that are healthy and could play because they're chasing lottery balls. So they did that the last 2 years Dame was here too. So I don't know how many years in a row there's going to be much of an appetite for that. So I would think that there would be some sort of pressure to get things cranked up relatively soon. I mean, at least it'll be easier if they have an A1 star type of guy, like the guy that, people think Cooper Flag or Harper, one of the guys at the top of the lottery is going to be. But if they don't get that, then, it's going to be interesting to see how they navigate that.
All right. Of these teams that are at the top three in each conference, you got Cleveland right now, who's been impressive at 29-4. They're 5 games in front of Boston in the East. The Knicks are third at 24-10 in the West. You've got the Thunder at 27-5. Memphis at 23-11 with the Rockets in third at 22-11. Of those 6 teams, like, which one has probably been maybe the most pleasant surprise for you in terms of what they've been able to accomplish so far this year?
I think the most pleasant surprise would probably be the Grizzlies, just because last year was just like the season from hell for them with all the injuries they've had. This year, they've had a decent amount of injuries too, like not to the degree that they did last year, but like John Morant is out currently. He's week to week. They've had different guys in and out, and they've still managed to, keep winning. Jalen Wells, who they drafted in the second round, has been, a revelation for them, and Jaren Jackson has been playing really well lately. So they have some stuff going for them. And I kind of, with the amount of injuries that they've had, I didn't really expect their season to start off the way that it has. So that's the pleasant surprise for me. And then obviously, you have to talk about Cleveland, who, they've been the best team in the NBA so far, record-wise, and just a lot of the numbers show too. But I think you kind of have to default to the Celtics just because they are the defending champions and they still look really good. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's an interesting field this year. I still think, assuming Luka comes back relatively soon, I think Dallas is there too. That team's good.
Yeah, seeing Dallas in person, like we were treated to a nice show from Kyrie Irving with the shot making and stuff, but they've continued to play well with Luka out of the lineup. But you're right. I think Dallas is legit. I just continue to be impressed with the work that Jason Kidd has done with that group, because I don't know if you looked at it the same way I did, but I kind of raised my eyebrow when they acquired Kyrie Irving, but they found a way to really get that to work well between Kyrie and Luka, and they've been better defensively, which is impressive to me.
Yeah, Kyrie has been probably about the best case scenario of what a team could hope for when they trade for Kyrie Irving, because you have to remember just, what the situation was when they traded him, when he got traded from Brooklyn, where, there was still all that weird off-court stuff going on with him with the social media stuff and kind of some of the kind of distractions that there were. And, his value was kind of at an all-time low. And so it was a little bit of a risk for Dallas to do it. And it's pretty much worked out about as well. He's playing great. There hasn't been any kind of weird, dumb off-court stuff like there's been with him in the past. So it seems like it's worked out really well.
All right, Sean Hyken is our Trailblazer insider from the Rose Garden Report. Make sure you check it out, rosegardenreport.com. He's got his new piece up, which is terrific as we approach a brand new year with the trade deadline right around the corner. 5 questions for the Trailblazers in 2025. You can follow him on social at Hyken. Hey, Sean, enjoy the game tonight. We'll catch up soon. I appreciate it.
Yeah, good to talk to you, man.
Love Sean Hyken. Blazers, Lakers coming up at 7:30. With the coaching list, there's no doubt that Joe Cronin's got a short list of guys. Any good GM's going to have a short list of, coaches when they're in a situation we're going to hire. So everyone out there who is frustrated with Chauncey, look, I like Chauncey, but he's not going to come back next year. This will be the last year for Chauncey Billups, who was hired by Neil Olshey, and then Cronin will have a chance to go out and make the hire. My guess would be a younger coach. And he's going to be working with younger guys. You're not going to bring in an established coach. And I'm not sure an established coach would want to come in and go through, the process of, teaching a bunch of young guys compared to having a team that's more ready-made to win. So, and I think, look at some of the success like in Memphis and Oklahoma City where you have these, out-of-box hires, of guys who aren't really known, but they turn out to be great coaches and developers. That's where Portland's going to have to look. All right, we'll keep things rolling. I'll focus in on the Ducks coming up at 4. Right now, Georgia, they just stopped Notre Dame on 4th and 1, and they've got the ball near the Notre Dame 40-yard line, trailing 20-10 with 4:18 left in the third. Sugar Bowl right now. Notre Dame on top, 20-10 with 1:45 to play in the third quarter. Georgia came up with a big 4th down and 1 stop at midfield, and then they faced a 4th down and 2 near the Notre Dame 40. They got stopped, and now the Irish have the ball back and are in Georgia territory, just inside the 40. It's one of those games where a couple of mistakes by Georgia have put them behind the 8 ball. So Notre Dame trying to seal the deal here. We'll see if they can do it. More of a defensive battle like you would expect with these two teams, but Notre Dame so far looking good. And, obviously if they can get a touchdown here and go up 17 as they near the end of the third quarter, would put themselves in a good position. So the winner of this game will move on to face Penn State. In the other semifinal, you'll have Texas and Ohio State. And right now it's hard to imagine Texas being able to have great success against Ohio State based on how they're playing. But again, it's going to be interesting to see. They did it in back-to-back games. College football teams have never been in a position where they've had to play, great games in consecutive weeks based on the way the schedule has been set up. But with the playoff now, teams are being, asked to be great in multiple weeks in a row. And they never had to do that before. Ohio State played 2 terrific games against Tennessee and Oregon. And we'll see how things continue to shake out. But Georgia and Notre Dame right now, 10-point difference, Irish with the lead. It's probably hard for anyone out there to try and figure out who to pull for in this one. No one likes Georgia because they're SEC, and Kirby Smart is crazy, but he's great. And then Notre Dame. Outside of Notre Dame fans, there's a lot of people that cheer against them, which is understandable. So we'll see how things continue to shake out. But so far, physically, Notre Dame is holding up well. Third quarter just came to an end, so they're getting ready for the fourth quarter down in New Orleans in the Sugar Bowl. So we could have, really, who do you pull for now? You got Ohio State and Texas on one side. Ugh. And then you could have potentially Notre Dame and Penn State on the other. It's tough. We don't have that Cinderella story. Those are all blue blood programs for crying out loud. I don't know. NFL playoffs, this is going to be a great weekend. I was talking to Travis Demers, voice of the Trailblazers. He's got this dilemma. He's going to have an off day in Detroit before the Blazers and Pistons play. So he's going to be there, and the biggest game of the weekend in the NFL is going to be in Detroit. Vikings and Lions are matching up in Detroit. Winner of the game gets home field in the playoffs. Loser will be the 5 seed and have to play a road playoff game. How crazy is that? You talk about a winner-take-all situation. That is the situation. Winner-take-all. Win, and you get a bye and only have to play 2 games at home to reach the Super Bowl. Lose, and you open up on the road and face potentially 3 road games to make the Super Bowl, which is bizarre. So right now, Detroit at 14-2, coming off the win over the 49ers. They're in the top spot. Right now, based on the schedule and the teams that have been played, Minnesota sits at 14-2 because they lost the earlier game at home to Detroit. Both teams 14-2. It's been a long time since we've had a Titanic matchup like this based on records and what's at stake in the NFL. But Trav's like, should I go to the game? I'm like, well, of course you should go to the game. How often do you get a chance to do that? But the secondary market right now, a bad seat or a quote, whatever you consider a bad seat, about $372. But how often do you have a chance to see a Titanic matchup like that? And the great part is here for Minnesota is that they may have discovered their quarterback of the future, and it may not be J.J. McCarthy. It's going to be Sam Darnold, who is playing like an MVP, and he's going to be a free agent after the year. And you've got J.J. McCarthy, who took the year off with the injury, and, they drafted him to be their next quarterback. But the problem is Sam Darnold looks amazing, and he's young. He's only 27 years old. So what do you do if you're Minnesota? Do you let him walk in free agency? I don't think so. When you work so hard as a franchise to find your next quarterback, and you've got a guy who's playing for you right now that has a chance to go out and win a game and earn home field advantage throughout the playoffs, and he's played like a superstar, I tell you what you do. You franchise him and then, have him be one of the top paid guys at the position, and then you can make a decision after next year. Get one more year to look at him, and if he continues to play at this level, then you can look to sign him to a longer-term deal with some guaranteed money. Because we don't know what J.J. McCarthy's going to be, but Sam Darnold right now is playing great football. which is further evidence that where these quarterbacks land in the draft, like if you get drafted by just a crap franchise like the Jets or the Cleveland Browns, there's a good chance you're going to be set up for a failure because those franchises are so pathetic in terms of how they're run. Pathetic. And they don't know how to develop. You get in a bad situation, and then before you know it, you're washed out, and they cut you, and now you're trying to latch on with another team. But Sam Darnold was able to get another chance. He wound up in San Francisco, got the blessing of Kyle Shanahan, and then he winds up in Minnesota with another great offensive mind and Coach O'Connell, and now he's playing like an MVP. Same thing happened to Baker Mayfield. He washed out in Cleveland because they're terrible, and then he winds up, getting some time under Sean McVay, gets the McVay blessing, and then he winds up in Tampa, and now he's playing. I think he's got more touchdown passes than anyone in the NFL right now. Maturity, getting the right situation, getting the right coach, and having an organization that knows what the heck they're doing. Look at the Browns, for crying out loud. The Haslam family, they're absolute fools, and they gave $230 fully guaranteed million to Deshaun Watson, the creeper, because they don't know what they're doing. And why do you think all those other NFL owners were pissed off at the Haslam family for doing that? Because it screws up the quarterback market. It's crazy. All right, Notre Dame just got stopped on third down. They face a fourth down, and now likely will kick a field goal to go up by 13, or they can try to go for it, and we'll see how things shake out. We'll come back. We're going to hear from Dan Lanning, who I thought was classy after the Rose Bowl yesterday. I like the way he operates, and we'll focus in on the Ducks. And then Chris Burkhart will join me in studio for a bigger discussion on the Rose Bowl and what the future holds for Oregon. Chad Doing here. You got the Rip City Drive. Blazers, Lakers tip-off tonight from L.A. at 7:30. Here on your home of the Blazers, 620 Rip City Radio.
Here's what you need to know. From the Goldberg Jones Sports Desk, your 620 Rip City Radio headlines. Goldberg Jones. Call 1-800-DIVORCE.
All right, 4 o'clock, Chad doing here. Rip City Drive continues here in just a moment. We start with the Portland Trailblazers, who are back in action tonight. They kick off a brand new year in L.A. against the Lakers to start a 5-game road trip. Tip-off will be at 7:30. Chris Burkhardt will have game day, which will kick off at 5:30. And it's here on your home of the Blazers, 620 Rip City Radio, presented by Coors Light. Anthony Davis is questionable for the game tonight. Sugar Bowl in New Orleans, fourth quarter with 10:57 to play. Notre Dame's on top of Georgia 23-10, and the Bulldogs right now have the ball. It's fourth down. They're driving in Notre Dame territory. The winner of this game will move on to meet Penn State in the national semifinal. In the other game, it'll be Ohio State, who advanced with a big win over Oregon yesterday in the Rose Bowl. They'll face Texas, who took out Arizona State in double overtime in the Peach Bowl. More of the Rip City Drive coming at you right now.
The home of the OSAA is 620 Rip City Radio.
Well, Georgia just got a big-time penalty call against Notre Dame. Fourth down and 13, and Notre Dame got tagged with pass interference. So that will give Georgia a first down, and it was pass interference. It sure looks like it on the screen or the review I'm looking at. So they'll get the first down, and if they score, they'll be down by 6 with plenty of time on the clock to get back in this one. Notre Dame's played a good game. A couple of mistakes there at the end of the first half where Notre Dame was able to get 10 points thanks to a Georgia turnover, and they had a 13-3 lead at halftime. But Georgia right now trying to make a comeback. First down and 10, and Georgia has it at the Notre Dame 16-yard line. So they're trying to get things done with the young quarterback Gunnar Stockton. The winner of this game is going to move on and face Penn State in the national semifinal. And, of course, in the other side, we're going to have Ohio State and Texas. Texas, who won in double overtime against Arizona State, like we talked about. And then you have Ohio State, who dominated Oregon yesterday, 41-21 in the Rose Bowl. Now, usually with games, sometimes, not all the time, sometimes I have a feel for certain games in terms of what I expect. Like, I thought Arizona State would be able to compete with Texas. I didn't expect a crazy drunk game that went into double overtime, but I knew Arizona State would be physical and have a chance to compete. Now, with the Oregon and Ohio State, I thought going in we'd have a one-possession game similar to what we saw at Autzen back in October. I thought it would be a close game that could go either way. I thought the two teams were evenly matched. I thought the Ducks being, healthy with the extra time to prepare would be in a good position, and the game just went the other direction. Ohio State started fast. They didn't let up off the gas. They built a 34-0 lead. And they were in control early in that game. And I think everyone knew going in that if Ohio State was able to get the ball to their playmakers on the outside where they could utilize their talent and their speed, that it'd be a big-time problem for Oregon, and that proved to be the case. And then Ohio State's defense with Coach Knowles has gotten better as the season's gone along, and they get pressure with their 5- or 6-man fronts, and they're able to run these exotic coverages. And Oregon didn't have a lot of guys open, and Dylan Gabriel often would be standing there, doing his little football taps and nowhere to go with the ball. A great defensive performance by Ohio State, and their skill level is off the charts. And I think we saw, you heard everyone talk about this. I think it's pretty well accepted that from top down, Ohio State's got the best roster in college football. The problem is we haven't seen them be able to put it together on a consistent basis on both sides of the ball throughout the course of the season. I think a lot of us may have fell victim to reading too much into the Michigan game. Ohio State fans are crazy. They put so much into the Michigan game that they play one bad game on the year against Michigan, and it's like the season is lost. But with the expanded playoff, they lose to Michigan, they still get in, and they're able to regroup and get things going. The part that surprised me most about the game yesterday was that Will Howard was able to go out and play nearly a perfect game. I mean, he was on point. He was on target. He was delivering the football on time. He made good decisions. And, he just looked good. He looked really good against Tennessee as well. The other part that surprised me over the last couple of weeks for Ohio State was how they were able to get high-level play from their offensive line, which had suffered significant injury, and yet they overcame it. They had good balance on the offense. I thought Ryan Day and Chip Kelly had a good game plan for how they wanted to attack the Ducks. And then, for whatever reason, Oregon just got off to that slow start, and they got buried. I thought they showed some good fight. They got the touchdown right before the end of half. They came out to start the second half and got the score, and they got it to within 3 scores, and you thought, okay, they got a chance. They even got Ohio State after the touchdown to start the second half, held them to 3 and out, and they got the ball back, and they couldn't do anything. Ohio State's defense was able to reestablish themselves, and Oregon just never got on track. But Dan Lanning, after the game, loved the way he handles himself and the way he operates. He had this to say.
They clicked tonight. We didn't, and I didn't get our team prepared. And that's a great team. When you play a great team like Ohio State, you can't not be clicking on all cylinders. And they were clicking on all cylinders. We didn't really have the ability to stop them, and didn't have the ability to get something going for us on offense. And we haven't faced a lot of moments like that this year. It's an unbelievable team. Coach Day and his staff have done an unbelievable job there. Don't want to discredit what our players have been able to accomplish this year. We had a great team. We just ran into a great team tonight, and we didn't play our best. So credit to those guys. I'll say this about our team. There wasn't a second we stepped on the field where I felt like our guys were disheartened. They didn't want to give the effort to go out there and play. I just don't think we had a good enough plan as coaches, tonight, and we got to find ways to prepare ourselves for these moments, better as a coaching staff. But I love that team. I love that team in there. I love what those guys were able to accomplish. And what's tough is when you play great teams at the end of the season, somebody's not going to come out on top. And those guys came out on top tonight. Obviously that's a team I think that has the ability to go win it all. So proud of our guys. Certainly proud of this season, and disappointed in the night. If you're competitors, no way you're not going to be disappointed in the result tonight.
Yeah, no doubt. Love that response from Dan Lanning. I mean, it's pretty obvious that Oregon, based on the format of the college football playoff, got screwed as a number 1 seed. They had to open up against one of the best teams in the country in Ohio State after they already played them earlier this year in their very first playoff game after having a perfect regular season, getting the number 1 seed. Your first game's Ohio State. The format and the way it's set up based on the system we were given to get to a 12-team format, it's not perfect right now. But what I love about Coach Lanning is that he didn't make any excuses. He didn't blame the format. He didn't complain about the format. He didn't mention it. He just gave credit to Ohio State and talked about how we as a staff need to do a better job of putting our players in a position to have success. That's good leadership. You point the finger at yourself and say, we as coaches have to do a better job and not make excuses. And he didn't. And I like the way that he handled that press conference there, because Ohio State was ready to go from the start. My man, Curtin Hillsborough, who's a big Duck fan, he said he blames Michigan for the flag planting, stirring up the fire inside of Ohio State and pissing him off. One thing for certain, and we've seen this in sports time and time again, right, where, in the moment it looks like a tragedy, but a lot of times a big-time loss and a big-time moment can really be exactly what you need to get things going. And I think what that loss to Michigan did is it, not just the players, but I think for the coaches, Ryan Day, Chip Kelly, the entire staff, they had a chance to go back and just take a look at everything they were doing, realize the mistakes that were made, and then just be better at game planning and focusing on what they do best. And we found that a better balance against Tennessee and Oregon, where they were able to kind of, marry the run game with the pass game. And they had the balance. And they've got the playmakers on the outside. They got super studs outside. So, I guess the part that surprised me was just a slow start for Oregon. But Ohio State was terrific. But for the Ducks, here's what's great about Oregon right now. You've got the resources to be able to be ultra competitive in recruiting and with NIL. Dan Lanning has found a school and a place that he loves and that has the resources where they're going to continue to invest in the program so they can build and get to where they want to be. And you'll continue to go out and find great players. I mean, think about the great players they've had recently. You had Marcus Mariota, nothing was going to be the same, until they got Justin Herbert. And then Herbert leaves, and it's like, how are we going to find another Justin Herbert? Well, they get Bo Nix. And then you lose Bo Nix, and how can we ever find another Bo Nix? Well, they went out and got Dylan Gabriel. So you're always going to be able to find great players. And I think for Dan Lanning and his staff, just remember this. As frustrating as it is to lose your first game and not advance in the playoff, when you had a team that was, put together to win a national championship, the great coaches, Nick Saban, Kirby Smart, all the great coaches that are around the country. It takes time to get to where you want to be and win a national championship. So I have no doubt that if Dan Lanning stays and he continues to work and he and his staff continue to improve and they continue to get better at all the little things that they want to do, that they're eventually going to get over the hump. The big advantage for Oregon right now is that we're in a very simple transactional recruiting time in college football where it's about the check. You talk to the player, you come up with the number, and can you pay the number? And if you can, then boom, you get the deal done. Oregon's got great resources. They'll continue to build and add talent to the roster. And Dan Lanning, who's still young in his head coaching career, will continue to get better and refine his skills. And eventually Oregon will be in a position once again to where they can go out and, make that approach to a national championship. That's what it's all about. All right, Georgia has just thrown an incomplete on 4th down and 5 deep in Notre Dame territory. The Irish will take over. 9:25 left, and it's a 23-10 game. So that's a big-time stop for the Irish. They're not out of the woods yet, but Georgia was in prime scoring position, and they're unable to get it done. And now Notre Dame will take over and try and spend more time off the clock. So we'll see what happens. That was a close call, but that was not PI, and Notre Dame able to survive. They get the stop, and now they'll see if they can run some time off the clock. But tough for Georgia because, you lose your guy in Beck. You've got Gunnar Stockton in there, and Notre Dame's defense is playing well. What's nice to see, at least if you're a Notre Dame fan right now, is that physically they're holding up well at the line of scrimmage. They're competing against Georgia, and they're putting pressure on Stockton. Their defense is playing really well, and they put themselves in a great position. We talk about the 4 or 5 big plays that can determine the outcome of a game. Well, what we're seeing right now with, Georgia and Notre Dame is that ending sequence there of the first half where they get 10 points in 11 seconds because of the turnover, and that put them in a great position. All right, so they just run it on first down for a few yards, second down for Notre Dame with 9:17 and counting left in the ball game at the Sugar Bowl. Winner of this game will move on to play Penn State. All right. But for the Ducks, you just got to continue to build. Go to work. Continue to recruit the heck out of the country the way Lanning is doing it. Look at the portal. You got to figure out what you're going to do at quarterback next year. Is it going to be Dante Moore or somebody else? And you just continue to push forward. But they've got the players. They've got the support of the university. They're investing in the program. They'll be back again. You know it. I know it. And now it's just a matter of continuing to refine the process, game planning, preparation, and making sure you're in a good position so that you get back to that spot and have a chance to compete again. And the good news is here in the near future, they'll revamp the seeding, and, number 1 seeds won't be penalized for being the number 1 seed. But Dan Lanning did not use that as an excuse. He didn't complain. He just gave props to Ohio State, who played a terrific ball game. All right, we'll keep things rolling here. Joining me next in studio is Chris Burkhardt. We'll get his thoughts on the Rose Bowl. He'll have game day coming up at 5:30. Blazers are in L.A. to meet the Lakers tonight. Tip-off at 7:30 here on your home of the Blazers, 620, Rip City Radio, presented by Coors Light. All right, joining me in studio now. Happy New Year to my man Chris Burkhardt, brother. What's up?
Hey, how we doing, Chad?
All right, you're a Duck, and you follow Duck circles. Where are the majority of Oregon fans placing blame on yesterday's loss to Ohio State?
Oh, it depends what part of the Venn diagram you're looking at, right? One circle has it on Lanning, one circle has it on Will Stein, one circle has it on the defense, and then they all come in the middle. It's a little bit of everything. One circle that I'm not seeing from a lot of Oregon fans, and a lot of them are being illogical here, is the Ohio State blame, right?
Yeah.
And that should be a circle because I watched that. They got beat. They got beat. I don't know if Oregon beat themselves as much as Ohio State had the game plan executed and walloped them, man.
All right, so why is it so hard as fans to just accept that sometimes you show up and you play a team that's just better than you are on that day?
I think it's because as a fan, it's hard to admit at any level that another team or another program is or was better than you on any given day, right? So if you lose, it's easy to say, okay, it was Coach Dan Lanning's fault. Will Stein did this. Dylan Gabriel did that. And it was all our fault internally because there's no way Ohio State's better. It's hard for a fan base to ever admit that another program is better than them. And I think that's why.
Like even yesterday, like I was all in on the Sun Devils. And as I was watching that game, I was irritated that they got screwed on that targeting call that was not called. But in overtime, they had Texas at 4th and 13. You make one play,
right,
and you win the game.
Absolutely.
And they didn't make the play.
They didn't make the play.
Oh.
They had their chance. They didn't make the play. So as much as you can sit there and you can fault the missed call there, and most people do think it was a missed call, myself included.
They blew it.
You had a chance at 4th and 13. And the bad part with that play, too, it's 4th and 13. Don't get beat over the top.
And they got beat over the top.
They get beat over the top.
Yeah, they did what they weren't supposed to. I was just impressed. What I did not think would happen in that game yesterday was Will Howard playing like perfection. I did not expect him to put up the performance we saw against Tennessee, against Oregon, yet he did that. He was flawless in the first half. And you and I talked about this. We knew if Ohio State got their guys on the perimeter involved, their big-time NFL-type players on the outside, that it would create problems for Oregon, and they did that early. They got the guys involved on the outside, and Howard was in a comfort zone, and they exploded in the first half.
They did, and that's what you have to do with a team like Oregon, a team that hasn't played from behind very often, right? And when you play from behind, it does change what your initial game plan was. And so you go out there and you just punch them right in the mouth, man, and you send them back to their corner, and they're beat up, and they don't want to come out for round two. And Will Howard, he deserves so much credit, man, because as much flack as he got, especially from his own fan base, because again, Ohio State. Nobody within Ohio State circles gave Oregon credit for beating them at Autzen. It was Ohio State's fault that they lost, right? Because no one ever wants to admit on any given Saturday the other team was better.
Well, Howard blew it. We screwed up.
Yeah.
Oregon cheated.
Yeah, exactly. It was never that the team was better for the full, 60 minutes. But Will Howard, I think, deserves a ton of credit because he did. He took a lot of blame for that loss because of that slide as time expired. And he said that didn't sit well with him. He was looking for this chance at redemption, and he came out and he looked like one of the best quarterbacks in the country in that game. He was so precise with everything he did.
Yeah, there's no question about it. And the weird thing about Will Howard, when you hear him talk, and the way he carries himself, he's like one of the nicest human beings on the planet.
Yes, he does come across that way.
Oh, my goodness.
Sure.
But you made a good point. A lot of Duck fans won't want to admit this, but bad game for Dylan Gabriel.
I thought it was Dylan Gabriel's worst game. I really did. He had happy feet, and he was locking on to receivers. He is absolutely lucky. He didn't have 3 picks in that game. How many times he threw into double or triple coverage with a line, not only the coverage, but there was the defender between him and the receiver. It was like, it was insane, the decisions he was making. And then you go through and you see some of those replays, and he instantly gets flushed out to his left, and he has guys open. He just doesn't see them or sees them far too late because of his happy feet. And there wasn't enough, quite honestly, stepping into the pocket. I don't think the pocket was collapsing on him every single play. They were definitely getting pressure, and Ohio State's defensive front deserves a ton of credit. But I think in most games, Chad, I think he's able to use that speed of his, get out and find the receivers on the run. He did all year. In this one, I think he was beat up a little bit because of his size. I mean, how many times was that ball hit at the line of scrimmage because he wasn't getting it over the initial line of defense there. So, yeah, I thought he played the worst game of his Duck career.
Yeah, he's 5'11", listed at 5'11". He came back this year because he was hoping to improve his draft stock, and he probably has. But the issue is going to be he's one of those guys like Kyler Murray or Russell Wilson where you have to have an offense designed to work with his limitations because in the NFL, that intermediate game is going to be difficult for him because getting the football out over the line of scrimmage without those tip balls, which end up in interceptions in a lot of cases, that's the problem for him. Undersized.
Yeah. No, undersized. And then you talk about Kyler and you talk about Russ. You designed that offense around him, and I don't think the offense was never ever really intended to be designed around Dylan Gabriel. Is going to plug him in for a year, see where we go. But also like Kyler Murray, his foot speed and elusiveness, and Russell during his prime in Seattle, they were elite.
Yeah.
Right. And Gabriel's not an elite runner. I
No.
mean, he can make it look good, but he doesn't have that same pizzazz that those two guys do. So he has to be super accurate with the ball when he gets out there. And again, he just wasn't on this day at the Rose Bowl.
All right, I like what you're thinking is moving into the future. Again, fans right now today don't want to hear this, but being patient with Dan Lanning is the key. How so?
Well, I think you have to because first thing, I think you look at teams right now, you look at Notre Dame and Georgia playing right now, you look at this Ohio State team, and one thing I feel that those teams have that Oregon doesn't is depth all the way through the depth chart. Oregon has really good top 11, right? But when those guys go out, now you're hurting. I mean, you saw it in this game when Jordan James gets hurt, right? Oh, no, Whittingham, he's not the same running back. They don't have a lot of depth outside of that. That's what the talking heads were saying, and it's true, right? And the best way to build that, Chad, is recruiting cycles, right? So you use your recruit, and then everyone can dog Dan Lanning for the last few years about, he's been living in the transfer portal, and he has. And if you go historically, that's what good coaches do when they get to a new program. You use the transfer portal to build your sustainability and keep your on-field product elite, and you use your recruiting classes to build up that depth in the long run. And now you're going to start to see where that shows, because I think next year they're going to be a little deeper, and the year after that, and they're just going to continue to get better in doing so. But you have to let him build that stock out. Otherwise, you're just going to empty your cupboards every 4 years, and that's stupid.
I agree. He's an elite recruiter, and as a coach, he's so young in the position, but he's getting better at being a head coach. So let him grow into the role, and he'll continue to get better. And Nick Saban, Dabo Swinney, Kirby Smart, all the great coaches that we see in college football today, they didn't win national championships overnight. It took time.
It took time, and don't act like Dabo never made a mistake in his coaching career or Nick Saban or any of that. I think you look at how Dan Lanning coached those 2 losses to Washington last season, and everyone's like, he's going to learn from this. He's going to learn from that. I thought he did. I don't think in those same late game, 4th down situations, he coached the exact same way. He still has a pair on him. He likes to go for it on 4th down in some questionable situations, but I do think he learned from those situations, and you'll do so moving forward. The thing that gets me, I mean, it's been Twitter and all social media has been troll central for the last 24 hours, and I can't tell you how many times I've typed and then deleted, right? But I mean, it's just, hey, you're going to take your lumps, and the whole so-and-so can't win the big game. So-and-so got him to the big game, right? You have to be in the big game. And that was the same narrative on Ryan Day. And if Ohio State moved off of Ryan Day, I think that'd be stupid right now. He's a really, really good coach. You have just put these expectations on him of the Ohio State University, and there's a lot that comes with that.
How much did you enjoy watching Cam Scatterboo yesterday?
Oh, my gosh. Oh, my gosh.
Now you know why I've been talking about this
I
guy
have
for so
not been
long.
an anti-Cam. He's just been my second favorite running back because I really, really like Genty. And I think if you go through and really analyze the film against Penn State, Genty didn't play terribly.
No, he played really well. In fact, I think he showed stuff on tape against Penn State that NFL scouts will love.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just, and you talked about it on the drive last week when I was with you. It's just that front seven of Penn State.
So good.
Boise State's front seven was no match for him. They couldn't block him. They couldn't do anything. And so Genty took a pounding, but I still think he showed some stuff. Now Scatterboo, he has been my second favorite running back. He might have been my first by the end of this game. I mean, a passing touchdown. He's running like crazy. He's puking his brains out on the sideline, goes right back to it. I mean, after he gets the pass interference and the face mask and jumps up like that, that's a meme that's just going to live forever. Like that is just football gold right there. He is so good. And what they both do that not enough running backs do, and if I'm a running back coach at any level, I'm putting those two on film and telling them to watch, is both of them, when they get that handoff, they are so slow on purpose because Cam lets the hole develop and lets the play develop and then uses his elite burst to hit that hole.
Yeah.
He doesn't just go to the hole before it's open and then you get smothered and you're hit for a 1-yard gain. He lets the play develop and then uses his elite skill to make something of it. It's the same thing Genty does, and that's what elite, really, really good running backs do.
That is a great point. I heard an interview today with Cam when he was on with Dan Patrick, and Patrick asked him who he, tailors his game after. And he said himself, and then he mentioned a few guys, and one of the guys he mentioned was Le'Veon Bell.
Mm-hmm.
And Le'Veon Bell was famous for being really slow after the snap when he got the ball, of waiting until the line got in a position to where the hole was set, and then he would take off. And Scatterboo, to mention Le'Veon Bell, I was like, okay, that's where he gets his patience from. Because patient runners who aren't so quick to hit the hole, if they just wait a moment, let things breathe, they can find the creases, which can be the key of turning a 2-yard gain into a 5-yard gain,
Yes.
or a 10-yard gain into a big explosive play.
Yeah, it's not that you're not going to get a gain. It's just you might double your yardage because you were smart enough to let the hole develop. And a guy like Cam who can move left to right very well too, if you're slow enough and you see that hole's not developing, you bounce it to the opposite side and you get some yardage out of it. I mean, Michael James was good at that too, seeing where the hole was and when it wasn't
great
developing.
vision.
Bounce out, then hit the boosters, right? And Cam does that like no other.
My thought with Scatterboo is like some team, if you draft him, he could be a standout on special teams. He's a great, he can catch the football, so you can use him in third down, but he'd be great in blitz pickup. Like the right coach will find him and find different ways to get him on the field where he can have a positive impact. He could carve out a nice career for himself.
Yeah, he absolutely can. He has that next level vision. And unlike some other guys, like I said, Michael James was one I just mentioned. He has the size to go with it, right? He can take a pounding, and I think a guy like his skill set right now is even better in today's NFL because the years of like Genty's going to be crazy because Genty's going to go get drafted, and even if he's the best running back on the roster, he's going to get less handoffs than he did at Boise State, right?
Absolutely.
Because there's no such thing as a one running back team anymore. It's running back by committee.
That's why what Saquon Barkley did this year for hitting the 2,000 mark is so unbelievable because we're in a different day and age of the NFL.
No, absolutely. So if you get Cam on the right team with good playmakers, and I know you like to throw the name out there just because they're your team, but like Denver, like that makes a lot of sense, right? If he can get to Denver somehow because they don't have like that big premier back really, but you get a nice young running back with a good, yes, he's old, but a rookie going into his second year, Bo Nix, and you start to build the foundation there. That's the type of guy I want for a guy like Bo Nix.
Yeah, another guy he said he patterns himself after is Christian McCaffrey. Now, they're different style of players, and McCaffrey's got the speed and the ability to really be a game breaker, but that type of player where it's nice when you have a back who can play on third down, play in short yardage, catch the football. I like versatility. Yeah, that's what's cool about those players. But Genty is, you're right. I'm glad that you noticed that too. I thought even with the fumble, we talked about the layoff, right? All the teams that had the long layoff with the bye all got off to a ridiculously slow start in those playoff games.
Yeah. And
you're not used to the contact. You're not taking the punishment, and all of a sudden you're back out there on the field with that type of speed. It's tough.
Yeah, it's like the same logic that I argue with Donovan Clingan in the Blazers and wanting to see him on the floor. They're like, oh, well, he's going to work on his conditioning at practice. And no, he's not because yes, he is in theory, but there's no substitute for a game.
None.
No matter what, no matter how hard you go at practice, there is no substitute for a game. And the idea of the bye, I think, sounded good to a lot of us, myself included, but I was thinking about it more in terms of like the NFL. Okay, 1 week off, then you're going to almost an entire month between games. I mean, that's like you're taking a poison pill in football terms, man. You've lost all your fluidity, your momentum, all the things that matter, and you're starting back up against a team like Ohio State who got a good warm-up game a week before, and they got all the kinks out, man.
I wonder if Ohio State if they're just going to be this good throughout the rest of the tournament and win the championship. That's what it looks like right now.
That's what I don't see a team better than them. I'm watching this right now, Notre Dame and Georgia. I don't think either one of them are better than Ohio State is right now.
Well, most Buckeye fans, because they're technically insane, if they win the national championship, will they still not consider it that great because they lost to Michigan? Probably, right?
No, because here's the deal. If somehow like Oregon would have got into a national championship game last year despite losing a game to Washington, I wouldn't have cared. Give me a loss to Washington in a national championship all year long. I'll take it. I will take it. Ohio State fan might be a little bit different, though. Losing to Michigan might be.
Well, I saw Softy. Husky fans are loving what took place yesterday, aren't they? They love it.
They are, and that's the part that blows me up. Like, dude, tweet about your own team. Worry about Seattle, man. You're so and then you wonder why Oregon fan likes to rile you up because you are so worried about what Oregon is doing. Like, your team's not even in the playoff. Worry about your recruiting and just worry about your stuff.
Sports envy is a serious disease.
It really
It's a serious disease. All right, Notre Dame's putting the finishing touches. They're going to win. They're on top 23-10 with under a minute to play. Wow. The Irish physically holding up against Georgia. Very impressive.
Yeah, they absolutely are. They're well coached. Freeman's a good coach out there. Perfect replacement for Kelly, who is a little bit overrated by my book. I don't think he's great, but he's doing great there, man.
Oh, man. Penn State, you know what? Penn State, Notre Dame could be an underrated great game. Because the more I watch Penn State, or at least the last couple of games against Oregon and then Boise State, like they're opening up their offense a little bit more. Drew Aller's looking a little more comfortable, and we know their defense is good, but they've played well of late. So that should be a heck of a game.
Yeah, it really should be. And I like Penn State. I like Notre Dame, what they do too. Penn State, I think Penn State might have came into this whole thing as one of the more underrated teams, though, because they're good on both sides of the ball. And if they can click for an entire game, they can stick it to you, man. So that's a real good matchup right there. And yeah, I don't think Texas Ohio State is as good though with the way Ohio State's playing.
Look at how it can change in a college football season. Notre Dame, when they lost to Northern Illinois earlier in the year at home, we thought their season was over. And here they are now advancing to the college football semifinal. Ohio State looked dead after that loss to Michigan, and here they are looking like the best team in the country, which is crazy. I thought Kurt in Hillsborough, who's a big Duck fan, he said he blames Michigan. Sometimes a big-time loss that's devastating, and then, of course, they came out and planted the flag and created that stir. Like, sometimes that type of situation can be a good motivator. I think it allowed the coaching staff and the players to kind of go back and do a little evaluation and get themselves ready for moving forward.
It's the moment that humbles you, right?
Yeah.
You get humbled. They weren't humbled by the loss at Oregon because, again,
it wasn't their fault.
It wasn't their fault. You're like, okay, we lost, but it was a tight game on the road, blah, blah, blah. But the Michigan one, you got humbled because you got dominated. Like the Oregon game, Oregon didn't dominate them in that win. That was a really, really good football game with both teams just trading blows. That Michigan game, they got handled. They got handled, and that was your humbling moment, man. When you get humbled, sometimes you come out the other end just fired up, ready to go. I think Ohio State did.
That's just a bummer. If you would have told me that Ohio State was going to jump out to a 34-0 lead, I'd be like, shut up.
No, so would I. I think everybody would have. I was expecting a close game. Analyst in me probably was leaning Ohio State, but I was never going to go against my Ducks because that's what I do. I'm always rooting for them, and yeah, that was bad. That was bad. Did not expect that whatsoever.
You're right, though. The big difference between Oregon and the upper crust of college football, when you get to this level, it's having the second and third guy at different positions who can step in and play at a high level if guys go down. That's the difference.
I totally think so.
We saw it earlier in the year with Oregon. Remember when they had the injuries on the offensive line early? Mm-hmm. They struggled until they got those guys back.
They absolutely did, and they were messing stuff around and moving guys out of position to try to get through it. And then again, the same thing happens with Ohio State, right? They lose their center. And now their offensive line is still playing like not skipping a beat, playing like one of the best offensive lines in football. And again, it's that depth thing, and that comes with recruiting and building the things up the way you want. And that's why you have to give these coaches time. I mean, I think what Dan Lanning's done in 3 years at Oregon is absolutely great. And I think Jeff Schwartz pointed out, everyone wants to talk about the transfer portal. He hit the transfer portal hard his freshman year, or his first year. Second year, he had fewer transfers, and then heading into next year is poised to have fewer transfers again, which again is starting to lean on that recruiting. And even Dante Moore coming in via the transfer portal, like I'm really eager to see if he can get the job and how he plays, because I think people forget, but he was committed to Oregon as Dan Lanning's first big I got him recruit, right? And then he flipped to UCLA, and the minute it happened, I said, I guarantee he hits the portal and comes back. He just wants to go get the starting nod, and he did at UCLA. And now Dan Lanning has a guy he recruited 3 years ago.
So do you expect Moore to be the starting quarterback next year?
I fully do. I don't think Nova Sad beat him.
Go ahead. I had forgotten that. So Lanning originally recruited Moore to Oregon.
Recruited him, got him. He was committed. and then he was that late flip to UCLA, and because Bo
He
Nix.
didn't want to come over because of Bo Nix, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, okay.
I think he wanted to go where he could start and then see how it went, and he got that year of starting under his belt, and then came back to Oregon. So it makes sense. And
So in the long run, he'll be better off for the time he got as starter at UCLA. Now that he's ready,
which
to
I
take over the
think,
program.
which when it happens, like I want to see how often that happens more often in college football with the way the portal is. Like, hey, I want to come play for you, but there's no avenue for me to start, but I can go start here at school X. I'm going to go there. I'm going to start, and then I'm going to hit the portal. I'll see you in another year.
All right, we'll come back. We'll continue to break it down with Chris Burkhart. He's got game day coming up at 5:30. Blazers and Lakers will tip off from L.A. at 7:30 here on 620 Rip City Radio. All right, telephone number is 503-248-0620. Chris Burkhardt is with me right now. We know that Ohio State is the top spender in NIL dollars in college football, correct?
We've seen that number before. It's looking here on On3, as they point out, Ohio State famously has a $20 million roster right now.
Let's go out to Michael from Lakeland, who's an ASU alum. He shares my love of the Sun Devils. Michael, what did you think about that game yesterday, buddy?
Well, here's what I'll say. This isn't sour grapes, right? We can say, yeah, they didn't convert on 4th and 13, or they didn't hold up one play. They needed to do that. But the egregious no call. I mean, I haven't heard anybody with half a brain say that it wasn't targeting. I'm not a conspiracy theory guy, but the sky was blue, and the referees looked up and said, "No, everyone, the sky is not blue." And I can't help but think, had it been an ASU guy, same hit. I've got the picture with when the collision occurred, helmet to helmet. The guy's head is down, his crown is going into the helmet, just like ASU's Dillingham said. I don't know what targeting is. If that's not targeting, then I don't know what it is. And I will tell you, I have a really hard time believing that if an ASU player did the same hit, that it's going to go ASU's way. And I don't have a whole lot to go on with that, but I just feel that way.
No, Michael, I agree. No, I agree, Michael. I think that in that situation, I think they were protecting the big brand and the big conference in the SEC in Texas.
Yeah, well, it was egregious, and I don't know that there's much anybody can do about it, but it was egregious. I mean, it wasn't like, oh, maybe this isn't targeting. It absolutely was. You listen to the guys calling the game, they're like, oh, yeah, targeting. Hands down. They called the expert. Oh, yeah, that's targeting. And they're like, what? Not. Oh, it's not. So, that has to be addressed. And I kind of wish Dillingham would have just melted down in the presser. I didn't actually see it. But I kind of wish he hadn't been so, understanding of all this. But he was fair. He probably didn't want to lose money. But someone needs to say something, because that was horrible. That was as bad a call as I've ever seen at any level of sports ever. So that's all I got.
Hey,
Thanks, man.
what'd you think of Scattaboo?
Oh, he was amazing.
Yeah.
He was amazing. The one thing I wish he would have done is kept his mouth shut about nobody can stop me prior to the game. He's a young guy. He probably feels that way, but they had his number early on, and he kept grinding, and he did great. And I wish him the best. I hope somebody, like you said, picks him up and, he gets an opportunity somewhere on special teams or something. He's not a huge guy, but man, you got to take a guy with that kind of heart. So,
I agree, man. I love it, Michael. I appreciate that. It was fun to watch them play well. Yeah, it was a bad call. They got screwed on that call. There's no question. No question. It's targeting. You put the rules in place to protect the players. You need to call it in that situation. But they didn't, and it's unfortunate because Arizona State would have likely gotten in field goal position and had a chance to win the game. And fortunately for them, ball don't lie. Texas got the ball after that possession and doinked a 38-yarder off the upright. The one thing I need to investigate, I saw a few people put this out there online based on the NCAA rule book. The field goal block in the first half where ASU missed the field goal on a block, it was blocked by a Texas player. It hit the turf and then bounced up and went through the uprights. I think that technically is a field goal. If it's touched by the defensive team.
I don't think so.
Based on the NCAA rule that I saw, I think it's a field goal.
I think you read something that was proved wrong because it was
I did not have
bad AI interpretation.
It
of
could
the
have
rule.
been, but Interesting.
Hey, I want to point something out to you. I did find this list you and I were talking about during the break.
This is the NIL dollars spent on football?
Yep. So everyone automatically just goes to, Oregon, the most expensive roster, can't do anything with it. They're not. And this is something that is interesting. So you can actually find some numbers here. And these are all estimates based on the best knowledge I have. NIL, NCAA.com. This website does all the collecting, and 24/7 has these numbers too. Oregon for next year, basing on their estimates for 24-25, Oregon would have the 19th most expensive roster next year at about 10 mil total revenue or total value in those NIL deals. Texas would be number 1 at 22. Ohio State would have a $20 million roster as well.
And that number is the amount of dollars spent on the football roster.
Like on the collective, for that year. And then LSU would have the third highest at 20
for next year. Who are the top? Give me the top 10 for this year.
This year, let's see if I can find that
if
one.
You have it.
I don't have that one. The only ones I was able to find in this short window was next year's, but still.
Based on the estimates, next year Oregon would be 19th.
Which I think they were right in that same range, like right in the mid-teens to back teens. But you look at some of these teams that have put stuff together. It's Texas, Ohio State, LSU, Georgia, A&M, Michigan, Bama, Florida, Clemson, Oklahoma. I think that's your top 10. Penn State, Indiana, Michigan State. Virginia sneaks in there at a $12 million roster. Tennessee, Auburn, Arkansas, Kentucky, and then Oregon just ahead of Florida State.
Kentucky sneaking in.
Yeah, right?
They got a few guys that care about football down there.
Right. God. And again, and I've seen a lot of UW fan, right? In my mentions and on social media talking about Oregon and all their NIL money. Well, Washington cracks the top 25 as well at an estimated 9.4 mil, which is just $1 million less than what Oregon's spending. So this idea that Oregon is the only team putting stuff together and getting NIL money for everyone, it frustrates me because they're not, and they're not even the top spender. I've heard from multiple sources, and you've heard as well, that Oregon's Division Street Collective, though, is one of the most organized collectives. They got their stuff together.
Based on what I've been told by moms who have kids who are part of the recruiting process, the organization that Oregon is putting out there in terms of their focus, like we're talking about elite level in terms of how they're operating.
Yeah, elite. But again, Texas, all these teams.
You don't have to be a top 5 spender to win a national championship.
No, you don't. But I'm just pointing out that Oregon is not spending money hand over fist more than every other school out there just because they have Phil Knight. It's always been a thing that bothers me. You're telling me Ohio State doesn't have donors? Texas doesn't have donors? Stop it.
Of course they do. Especially down in Texas where you got oil money.
You got oil money, yeah.
All right, that's going to do it for this portion of the show. Chris Burkhardt stopping by. You're going to be back on here shortly with Game Day as the Blazers kick off the 5-game road trip.
That's right. We're going to talk about it.
All right, coming back, I'll focus in on the Peach Bowl, and we'll celebrate a little Cam Scatterboo! Scatterboo! Love him. All right, we got to talk about what went down yesterday. One of the best college football games I've seen. That was thrilling. So we'll focus in on Scatterboo, and then Chris Burkhardt will have Game Day at 5:30. You got the Rip City Drive. All right, I want to focus in on the college football playoff for a few minutes and really talk about the Peach Bowl. And as many of you know, I am a big Arizona State Sun Devil fan. And I want to set this up so you understand where I'm coming from on this, because yesterday's game was one of the all-time greats, a classic, and it's one I'm going to enjoy for quite some time. But I would say it was back in 2000, so what is that, like almost 25 years ago, my best friend Steve, and this is when I was much younger, he had hit me up and he said, hey, we should head down to Arizona. And I'm like, well, why? And he goes, well, I've been down there a few times, and it's the great spot for a weekend getaway. And he was explaining to me how when he was in the military, he had some leave, and he went down to catch the Washington Redskins at the time, take on the Arizona Cardinals at Sun Devil Stadium, and how it was really cool. And so the plan is that he wanted to go down, and we would catch an Arizona State game on Saturday, and then the next day the Redskins were in town, and we would catch the Cardinals and Skins at Sun Devil Stadium. And, of course, growing up with the Fiesta Bowl and Sun Devil Stadium, there was always a certain aura around the stadium, having watched it on television and stuff. So I'm like, yeah, I'm in. Let's do it. So we planned out this weekend in 2000 in November, and we went down and we went to the game, a night game at Sun Devil Stadium against USC. This is when Carson Palmer was playing. Heck, even Petros Papadakis was on the team, and the game was awesome. Arizona State had a torrid comeback in the fourth quarter where they scored 21 unanswered points. They forced overtime. It went into double overtime where USC ended up winning the game 44-38 or 44-41, somewhere in that area. And then the next day we went to the NFL game, Cardinals and Redskins. And then that night we drove over to downtown and caught the Suns and Rockets. So we called it the trifecta. And that weekend was the beginning of the last 24 years of us doing weekend getaways to Arizona. So we would pick out games. We would try to catch college and NFL if we could. We eventually expanded out to Tucson to check some of the Arizona Wildcat games. And we've started going to the Territorial Cup games, Arizona State, where we go and we check out that game because it's the in-state rival. And so we've been to like 4 straight of those games. But over the years, I've been to 22 different Sun Devil games, including bowls. And we love Tempe. And if you've been to Tempe, and I know a lot of you Beaver and Duck fans have been down there, it's a great spot because everything's laid out perfectly. The stadium is nice. The weather's perfect. And it's just an awesome time. And so what's happened is that over the course of time, I've just kind of adopted the Sun Devils as my secondary team. And then they continued to make a move up the charts. And then what happened is a couple of things. One, really fell in love with the early edition of the Herm Edwards team because Jaden Daniels was at Arizona State before he transferred to LSU, and he was a tremendous quarterback. So we had a chance to see him and Brenden Ayuk and Eno Benjamin and some of the greats that were a part of that squad. And I was there for the Oregon loss, the 31-28 game where Jaden Daniels threw that touchdown pass to Ayuk on 3rd down and 17 in the fourth quarter. So really love that team. And then the COVID year hit, and then after that, Herm Edwards was fired, and the program was put on sanctions by the NCAA for recruiting violations during the COVID period. The program had really fallen upon hard times, and for years, this has not been a very good football program. They've won some big games, but haven't really been a serious contender, haven't really done much, and except for that, 96 year where they went to the Rose Bowl, they had shared a championship, I think, back in like 2007, but they weren't really a big-time program. And so I saw a lot of bad football games over the years with Arizona State playing. Well, Kenny Dillingham took over a couple of years ago, and I had known him during his time at Oregon, and I was fascinated by his work as a coordinator and being kind of that quarterback whisperer, a very good quarterback coach. Obviously, the work with Bo Nix and how he's able to, get him back on track after his time at Auburn. And then he got the opportunity to go back to ASU. And Kenny Dillingham is the youngest coach in the FBS. He's a fascinating individual. He's got a lot of energy, and I'm drawn to guys like that, as I'm sure a lot of you are. And I know the players are, but he's unique in the way he handles everything. And unlike a lot of coaches that would use ASU as a stepping stone, this was his dream job because he grew up in the Valley, went to high school there in Scottsdale, went to ASU, is a Sun Devil alum, and had a chance to go back home and coach the team that he grew up as a fan of. And his family were big Sun Devil fans. They won like Tailgaters of the Year on multiple occasions. He was around the program, went to school there, met his wife there. So the whole story I really enjoy. Well, last year I went down and saw 2 games in his first year. And they were both losses, 27-15 to Oklahoma State. And then I saw them get smashed in the Territorial Cup game. They lost 59-23 at home to Arizona. And they only won 3 games, back-to-back years of 3 wins. So they were a bad football team. But Kenny Dillingham, one of the first things he did when he took over as coach is he went out and he discovered Cam Scadaboo at Sacramento State and brought him over. And from the first time I saw Scadaboo play, even though the Sun Devils were bad, I was like, that guy's special. And he was doing the same types of things that we saw this year, last year, but no one knew about it because they were a bad team and they weren't getting any type of pub. And I would tell people about Scadaboo, but people were like, dude, it's Arizona State. Who cares? And I'm like, well, he's a great football player and you should watch him because you'll enjoy it. Well, no one listened to me. And then we went down and caught the opener this year against Wyoming. And they won big. They nearly shut them out. It was like 48-7. So they dominated and looked really good. And I knew based on the transfer portal, they had brought in some key additions on both lines of scrimmage. They had found a couple of players. They went out and gotten Sam Levitt, who I knew from his time at West Lynn, who was at Michigan State. And when Jonathan Smith took over, Levitt made the move to Arizona State. Now, I didn't know at the time what type of quarterback Levitt would be. I knew he was great in high school. But he actually, through spring practice, he beat out Jeff Sims, who transferred over from Nebraska, and also Jaden Rashada, who was the big-time superstar recruit, 5-star, who's now at Georgia. Sam Levitt won the competition. And early on against Wyoming and in the second game against Mississippi State, it was easy to tell that they made the right decision at quarterback. And Sam Levitt finished the season before the Peach Bowl, 24 touchdowns, 5 picks, very efficient, great delivery and accuracy of the football, and incredibly mobile like you saw in the Peach Bowl yesterday. So I knew early on they had something cooking. And they won their first 3 games in non-conference, and then they lost their first conference game. And so I thought, well, they're going to be good, but, you know, they're not where they need to be yet, but it's going to take some more time for Kenny Dillingham. Well, after that, they went back home, and I went down to see him play Kansas, and Scadaboo had over 180 yards, and they came back and won that game in the final moments. And that's where I really started to see the progress with Sam Levitt. And they had a superstar receiver in Jordan Tyson who came over, and he finished the year with over 1,000 yards and 75 receptions. He's a big-time player who got hurt in the final game of the year against Arizona and was unavailable in the Peach Bowl with a busted collarbone. But he was a great player. And then after that, they got over the next hump, which was a home game on a Friday night against Utah, a team they had struggled against. They won that game. And then in that game, Levitt got banged up with his ribs, so he missed the next game on the road at Cincinnati. So Jeff Sims played, and they lost that game. So they're sitting there with a record of 5-2. And I'm like, they got a chance to make a bowl. It would be a good season. Well, after that, they went on a tear. They got a bye week. Levitt returned. They beat Oklahoma State. And then they went on the road and pulled off the shocker where you knew something special was about to happen when they beat Kansas State on the road. They got out to a big lead, and then they held on for the win. And then they came back home after BYU had lost their first game of the year at home to Kansas, and they beat BYU, which put them in a position to get to the Big 12 title game. That was amazing. Then they finish out the year hammering Arizona, and they get into the Big 12 title game, and they crushed Iowa State. So there you have it. The season was there. They reached the college football playoff. They won the Big 12, and it was a terrific season. And for me, a lot of fun because just with the way they competed, Cam Scadaboo, the energy of Kenny Dillingham, the local connection with Sam Levitt, and the way that program came together. I've never had as much fun just following a team and what they're about and how they operate. So I loved every bit of it. And I thought the Peach Bowl yesterday was fascinating. I thought they represented well, and it was a game with so many big plays. But what I'm so happy about is that Cam Scadaboo on the national stage did everything he had done all year, and everyone got a chance to see it, which was terrific. And the fourth quarter yesterday was crazy. So Texas had scored a touchdown in the fourth on a run by Quinn Ewers, and they're down by a score of, 24-8. Down by 16. It looks like the game is over, and the Sun Devils are facing 4th down, knowing that the game is on the line, and this is where Scadaboo started to take over.
4th down and 2. Trailing by 2 possessions. Scadaboo's going to try to throw it downfield, and it is caught. And into the end zone goes Malik McClain. Cam Scadaboo.
All right, so Scadaboo gets the touchdown pass to McClain, and they pulled it within 10 at 24-14. They get the 2-point conversion, and it's now 24-16. It's a one-possession game with plenty of time on the clock. Cam Scadaboo today on the Dan Patrick Show talked about the Scadaboo touchdown pass and what the play call is and how it went down. Take a listen to this.
Oh, Philly special.
Oh.
So it was actually supposed to be a throwback to the quarterback. And I checked my receiver to a fade ball, and I seen him went inside, so I know how to put it.
Wait a minute. That's kind of big time stuff here. Like
yeah. So Sam told me the drive before, somebody rolled up my ankle. I can't really run. So you're gonna have to make something happen. And I was like, all right, well, let's go. And then the Philly special was called, and I looked at my receiver, and it was 1-on-1 out there. When I knew as soon as I caught the ball from the toss that safety was going to come flying down, because he was flying down all game. And as soon as I seen that guy 1-on-1, I knew we had the better athlete in that receiver. He hasn't played all season, but I knew what he was about. And as soon as I seen him went inside, I knew I had to put it inside of him. It was a little underthrown, but I guess I put it in a spot where only he could get it. So.
All right, so 24-16, Arizona State needs the ball back. Texas has it, and Quinn Ewers tried to burn him deep, and he paid the price.
Ewers to pass. Downfield, wants every bit of it, and it's intercepted. It is intercepted by Robinson.
All right, so Arizona State's got the ball back. You've got this quick change in possession, and this is where the game, in my mind, started to get really drunk. Take a listen to this play by Sam Levitt and Cam Scadaboo.
Levitt gonna launch it downfield. Looking for Scadaboo, and he gets him. Flag is down. Stiff arm, helmet off, and multiple flags down.
Arizona State would go on to get a touchdown after that big pass play to Cam Scadaboo, and they would get the 2-point conversion. So we have the game tied up at 24 with still plenty of time on the clock, and Texas was able to get down in scoring position with about, a minute and 30 on the clock or just under that, and they were set up for a field goal. Let's take a listen.
From 48 yards, and it is staying to the right, and we are staying tied up.
All right, so Arizona State still got life after the missed field goal, and this is where the game got, unfortunately, focused on the officials. Arizona State had the ball. I think it was 3rd down and long, and they completed a pass to Melquan Stovall that was short of the sticks by about 5 yards. But on the play, Stovall had clearly been targeted. You saw the replay. I saw the replay. It was a hit helmet to helmet against a defenseless receiver. Anyone will tell you who has half a brain that was textbook targeting. But they reviewed it. They decided not to throw the flag. And it's unfortunate because Arizona State would have had the ball in plus territory and still plenty of time. They most likely would have gotten a field goal attempt out of it. It's no guarantee they would have made it because their kicking game's hot trash, but they should have had the ball. It should have been called targeting. And it's unfortunate that the NCAA has more interest in protecting their big names and their big brands instead of calling the plays the way that they're supposed to. I don't like targeting and the way it's set up. I don't like players being suspended for halves or for the next half of the next game that they're in because of the targeting penalty, but they have it in place to protect players. And Stovall got smashed in the head and was on the ground for quite some time. If you have the play, if you have the rule, and you see a play that fits the definition, you've got to throw the flag. And I have a feeling that if it would have been reversed, and that was an Arizona State player that had led with his helmet and smashed a Texas player, they're absolutely calling targeting in that situation. But it's unfortunate. It happened. And that's the way it played out. So Arizona State punted, and Texas once again got into field goal range with a chance to win it at the end of regulation with a couple of seconds on the clock.
38-yard attempt to make it to the national semifinals and to cap a classic. Does he have it? Off right, denies him. Sparky's got life.
That's what I call poetic justice. When I saw him miss that field goal after Sark went out to hype up his guy and try to calm him, and then he misses the short field goal, he hooks it left, and it doinks off the upright. I was like, good. Poetic justice because they screwed Arizona State on the call. Well, ASU goes into overtime, and Texas won the toss. ASU gets the ball, and they were able to score a touchdown. A big 3rd down scramble by Sam Levitt to set them up inside the 5. They're able to get the touchdown, and they get the extra point, so they're up by 7. And then they put Texas in a very difficult spot. Defense steps up. It's 4th down and 13, And in my mind, I'm like, you got to blitz. You've got to blitz. You've got to get yours to get the ball out of his hands sooner than what he wants and force the incompletion. You win the game and you move on. It's over. And this is what happened.
Texas must convert 4th and 13.
It's a blitz look here. Quinn Ewers trying to audible.
To stay alive. Can they hook him? Touchdown, Matthew Golden. Texas must convert 4th and 13.
It's a blitz look here. Quinn Ewers trying to audible.
To stay alive. Can they hook him? Touchdown, Matthew Golden.
As painful as it is for me to say this, props to Texas. Great blitz pickup. Kenny Dillingham took the blame after the game for saying that he did not set his guys up in the best position to succeed because they had no way to audible out of that cover zero where they were going to blitz. And you saw yours at the line of scrimmage able to change the play. He got the right protection. And as soon as they snapped the ball, and I didn't see anyone from Arizona State breaking through to get to yours, I knew they were in trouble, and he went over the top of the defense. Safety got burned, and Golden made a great catch. And they tie the game, and we go into a second overtime. Texas scores on the very first play, and they get the 2-point conversion. So they're up by 8 in double overtime with Arizona State having the ball and needing to score and get the 2-point conversion to tie it and force the third overtime. And Sam Levitt on third down, just a little bit off.
3rd and 8. Levitt. That ball's intercepted. It is intercepted. Makuba seals it. Hook'em Horns. They're headed home to Texas to play in the Cotton Bowl. Texas advances. Makuba seals it.
Yeah, I was devastated, man. I wanted them to get over the top. I thought they were going to do it. And then the 4th down pass, and then Arizona State gets picked off, and the game is over. It's one of the greatest losses I've ever seen a team take, where I think Arizona State showed what they were about. They played the physical brand of football they had played all year, and Cam Scatterbo, I'm just happy that everyone finally got a chance to see him on the national stage, do everything I've seen him do for the last 2 years, and finally he gets the recognition for being one of the most unique football players I've ever seen. I thought that it would be Jamel Holloway that would be my favorite college football player of all time for the rest of my life, but I think Cam Scatterbo has replaced the one and only Jamel Holloway as my favorite college football player of all time. Barry Sanders is high on the list. There's been a few others, but I'm just captivated by his style, the way he plays, the fact that he wasn't recruited. He got 2 offers from high school where he was dominant in California from Holy Cross and Sacramento State. That's it. And I think there were a lot of players in that COVID area where, the recruiting restrictions, maybe there were certain guys that went unnoticed, and Scatterbo was one of those guys. But he got a chance to go to ASU, and he stuck it through the first tough season. He hung in there with Kenny Dillingham, and he had a chance to really show out. And now my main mission in life is to make sure the Denver Broncos draft Cam Scatterbo. Wherever he ends up in the NFL, whatever team gets him, he can be great on third downs. He's great in blitz pickup. He would be phenomenal on special teams, short yardage situations. That's a football guy who makes football plays and plays as hard as anyone I've ever seen. You want that type of player on your football team. Now, he was picked up on camera yesterday vomiting on national TV, and Dan Patrick asked him about that situation. All I can say is look out for the croissant breakfast sandwich.
Yeah, I think I was drinking a little too much water and Powerade. At the same time I think I ate something bad in the morning. I had a croissant breakfast sandwich, and I don't think it went down very well, and I wasn't feeling too good all the way leading up to the game. And until I threw up, I threw up, and I felt like a completely different person. And after that throw up, the game switched for me and how I was playing. It was completely different for me. So it was nice. I looked down, took a deep breath, puked, took another deep breath, and then got back on the field and, played my game of football. So
you didn't have it all over your uniform, did you? Like if somebody's tackling you, like
I leaned over, let it all out, and then got back up and put my helmet on. I was like, let's go.
But seriously, how much fun was that? I enjoyed the Peach Bowl so much, and those are the type of stories I think we're all looking for, guys like Cam Scatterbo. The result wasn't the one I wanted, but I thought it was a terrific game. It was an instant classic, and hopefully this is just the beginning for Kenny Dillingham and the work he's doing down at ASU. And for Cam Scatterbo, he's going to move on to the NFL now, and I hope it's the Denver Broncos, but some team and some coach is going to wind up with a big-time football player, and they're going to be thrilled to have someone like Cam Scatterbo because he can catch the football out of the backfield. He obviously can run a little faster than what you think, but he's great in short yardage. Contact balance is off the charts, and if you use him in special teams, he'll be super dynamic. That's a guy that will probably go like around the 5th round. No one will talk much about it when it goes down, but they'll end up in a position to where they're going to be able to utilize him. And he'll be a special player. And we've seen guys like Bill Belichick and others utilize players like that, which I think is great. But I thought ASU represented the conference well. They showed that they belong there and they can compete. And you know, what we've seen in the portal so far and in recruiting is that the success of Arizona State is paying dividends. So Kenny Dillingham's in a great position to continue to have success. I watched the Boise game on New Year's Eve, and I thought the Broncos, you know, played well. I thought Penn State could have played better. I thought they allowed Boise to hang around, but I was impressed with the Broncos. They made a couple of mistakes, a couple of errors, and they had a touchdown call back, but they played well against a team that has more talent than they do. And I thought Ashton Genty, even though he had the fumble, he showed the toughness, the burst, his ability. I mean, he's just simply one of the best backs. And he's going to be a big-time, draft pick for some team in the NFL. I thought he played well. But, you know, Penn State, I got to give them credit. You know, throughout the year, I wasn't impressed too much. But as the seasons went along, they've shown more dynamic capability on offense. I thought they played extremely well against Oregon in the loss on offense. Drew Aller, I think, is going to develop into a fine pick in the NFL draft. I think he's going back to Penn State for one more year. Their tight end, Warren, is awesome, and they've got 2 running backs who can absolutely run. Penn State's showing me a little bit more over the last few weeks than what I thought they were, and they got the job done. But I thought Boise played well enough, but a couple of mistakes early. In fact, not just Boise State, but I thought all the teams that had the extended layoff, just look at the score at halftime of the combined games. It looks like the layoff had some type of impact in terms of the slow starts. Arizona State got off to a slow start. They were down, 17-3 early. Boise State got down quickly in that game against Penn State. Oregon had issues out of the gate. And the same thing happened in, the game that we saw today with Georgia, getting off to a slow start against Notre Dame. So clearly the layoff, I think, had some impact. There's no question about it. But overall, from what we've seen from the playoffs so far, I love it, man. And it's only going to get better as they continue to tinker with the format. And I realize that the seeding was not perfect based on the automatic buys to the conference winners. But I've had so much fun throughout the season and into the playoff to see the matchups. And I'm excited about what it's going to hold in the future because they're going to expand more. And we'll get to 14 or 16 teams. And I think after next year, we may see some tinkering this year, but definitely after next season, I think we'll have a different setup in terms of more teams getting in. And also they'll have it set up to where if you win your conference, you get an automatic spot in the playoff, but they're not going to award buys to the conference winners. I think we'll get to a point where they're going to seed the tournament based on the final ranking from the committee. And then you have a more appropriate setup for the teams who have earned the position of the top couple of seeds in the playoff, which is the way it should be. But so far, I love what I have. The expanded playoff is great, and it's going to get better as they continue to weed out the old style of college football with the bowl games and all the nonsense into the new age of the expanded playoff. But I like what I see so far. And the best part is with the expansion of the playoff is that it gives an opportunity for us to have great stories like we saw with Arizona State. Teams getting in, getting a chance to prove that they belong, and having a chance to knock off one of the Titans. It's great. It's great. And a lot of fun. So, and props to Cam Scatterbo. The guy's a super stud, man. Tip of the cap to Cam Scatterbo. Scatterbo! Candyman Scatterbo. All right, that's going to do it for me. Coming up next, Chris Burkhardt has got Blazers Game Day. He'll set the table for you, and then we'll kick off the Blazer pregame show at 6:30. Tip-off at 7:30. The Blazers start a 5-game road trip against the Lakers today in L.A. Enjoy the game, my friends, and I'll talk to you tomorrow here on the Rip City Drive.